What if I told you that President Trump just ended the political careers of 6 Republican state senators in a single night because they betrayed him by voting with Democrats to protect Democrat congressional seats? That one of the Trump-endorsed challengers won by a margin of 73% to 27%, and that every Republican politician in America just received a message they will never forget. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. For months, the political establishment told you it was over. They told you the MAGA movement was dead. They told you the coalition that delivered the biggest Republican landslide in a generation had dissolved. They told you that Donald Trump was a lame duck, a second-term president fading into irrelevance, whose endorsements no longer carried weight and whose threats no longer inspired fear. The pundits said it. The pollsters said it. The consultant class that gets paid millions to be wrong about everything said it. And 8 Republican state senators in Indiana believed every word of it. They believed it so completely that they walked onto the floor of the Indiana State Senate and voted with the Democrats to kill a redistricting map that would have given Republicans 2 additional congressional seats in a chamber where the majority is hanging by a thread. They did it because their overpaid establishment political advisors assured them that there would be 0 consequences. Trump is finished. The Democrats are going to take back the House. You will still have your Indiana Senate seat long after he is gone. Yesterday was May 5th, the Indiana primaries, the day of reckoning. And what happened was not just a defeat for those senators. It was a political extinction event, an absolute bloodbath that has sent shockwaves through every Republican state house, every Senate office, and every congressional district in the entire country. If you believe that politicians who betray the voters who elected them deserve to face consequences, and that President Trump was right to go after every single one of these backstabbing senators, smash that like button right now. Every click sends a message that the MAGA movement is stronger than ever, and that no politician is safe if they cross the people they swore to represent. Because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what these 8 senators did and why it was such a devastating betrayal, how President Trump responded, and what he promised on Truth Social. What happened when Indiana voters showed up to the polls and delivered a verdict that no one in the political establishment saw coming. Why one commentator called this the most powerful display of presidential influence over party primaries in modern American political history. And what the Indiana results mean for redistricting, for the Save America Act, for Thomas Massie, and for the future of Congress itself. Now, let me set the stage, because you need to understand exactly what these senators did and why it matters so much. Back in December of 2025, President Trump pushed hard for Indiana Republicans to join the redistricting fight. Other red states were already moving. Texas had added 5 Republican seats. Missouri had picked up 1. North Carolina had picked up 1. Florida was preparing its map under Governor DeSantis. The strategy was clear and it was simple. Red states have the numbers. If every deep red state redraws its congressional map to reflect the actual political alignment of the state, Republicans can build a structural majority in the House of Representatives that is virtually impossible for Democrats to overcome. Indiana was a critical piece of that strategy. The state's congressional map had 2 districts that were drawn to favor Democrats in a state that is overwhelmingly Republican. Redrawing those districts would have created 2 additional Republican-leaning seats in the House. 2 seats in a chamber where every single seat matters. In a chamber where the Republican majority is so narrow that a handful of defections can kill any piece of legislation. This was not a vanity project. This was not about state politics. This was about the future of Congress, about whether the Republican Party could maintain its majority through the 2026 midterms and beyond, about whether the Save America Act would have the votes to pass, about whether the Trump agenda would survive or die. And so the new map came up for a vote in the Republican-dominated Indiana State Senate. Indiana is one of the reddest states in the country. The Republican Party holds massive majorities in both chambers of the state legislature. Passing this map should have been a formality, a rubber stamp, a 5-minute vote followed by handshakes and congratulations. Instead, 21 Republican state senators voted with the Democrats to kill it. 21 Republicans joined with the Democrat minority to defeat a redistricting map that would have helped their own party maintain control of Congress. The vote was 31-19 against the map. It was not close. It was not a narrow defeat. It was a decisive rejection of President Trump's redistricting strategy by members of his own party. I need you to understand what that means. These were not Democrats. These were Republicans, elected by Republican voters, running on Republican platforms, wearing Republican labels, and they walked onto the Senate floor and voted with the other side to protect Democrat congressional seats in a deep red state. Why? Why would 21 Republican state senators vote against the interests of their own party, their own president, and their own voters? One man, Mike Pence. These Indiana state senators aligned themselves with the Mike Pence wing of the Republican Party, the neocon establishment wing, the wing that despises the MAGA movement, the wing that hates populism, the wing that resents the working class voters who transformed the party, the wing that has never forgiven Trump for taking the GOP away from them and turning it into a party that actually fights for the people who vote for it. Mike Pence is from Indiana. His influence in the state's political establishment runs deep, and these senators made a calculation. They decided that Pence's wing of the party was the future and that Trump was the past. They decided that the MAGA movement was dying and that aligning with the establishment was the safer bet. They looked at the polls. They listened to their consultants. They read the opinion pieces in the Washington Post about Trump's declining influence. And they concluded that they could betray the president, betray their voters, and face no consequences whatsoever. They were wrong, and they are about to find out just how wrong they were. When the news broke that 21 Indiana Republican senators had voted with the Democrats to kill the redistricting map, President Trump did not let it slide. He did not issue a measured statement expressing disappointment. He did not move on to the next issue. He went on Truth Social and he made a promise. He told those senators, in terms that could not be misunderstood, that he was coming for them. Just like Liz Cheney, just like Adam Kinzinger, just like every Republican who has ever crossed him and learned the hard way that there are consequences for betrayal. Trump put these senators on notice. He endorsed their primary challengers. He directed resources toward their races. And he made it clear to every Republican voter in Indiana that these senators had stabbed the MAGA movement in the back and that it was time for them to go. The establishment laughed. The pundits dismissed it. These are state Senate races, they said. Nobody pays attention to state Senate primaries. Trump cannot project his influence down to the state level. These incumbents have local relationships, local name recognition, local donor bases. They will be fine. They were not fine. Now, let me tell you what happened on May 5th, because the results are so devastating, so comprehensive, so utterly lopsided that they have fundamentally changed the political calculus for every Republican politician in America. 8 of the 21 betraying senators were up for re-election in their primaries. 8. And when Indiana Republican voters showed up to the polls, they delivered what one commentator called a flat-out wipeout. Travis Hullman, District 19, one of the most vocal anti-Trump senators in the Indiana legislature. Gone, defeated. His political career is over. Jim Buck, District 21. Gone, defeated, career over. Greg Walker, District 41. Gone, defeated, career over. Linda Rogers, District 11, gone, and not just gone, obliterated. The Trump-endorsed challenger beat Rogers by a margin of 73% to 27%, 73 to 27. Those are not election results. Those are Liz Cheney numbers. Those are the kind of margins that tell you the voters did not just prefer someone else. They wanted to send a message, and the message was received. Dan Dural, District 1, gone, defeated, career over. When the smoke cleared, 6 of the 8 turncoat senators had been defeated soundly. A 7th is in a recount so close that it is literally within a handful of votes, and only 1 appears to have survived, barely by the skin of his teeth. 6 out of 8, gone, destroyed, wiped off the political map of Indiana in a single night. Think about the message that sends, not just to Indiana, to every Republican politician in every state in the country. You can vote with the Democrats. You can betray the president. You can side with the Mike Pence wing of the party. You can listen to your overpaid establishment consultants who tell you there will be no consequences. But when primary day comes, the voters will remember, and the voters will act, and your career will be over. One commentator on CNN, Scott Jennings, said it perfectly. He said, Trump is the boss of the party. He calls the shots. And if you go against him, he will pour his wrath out upon you. And it does not typically turn out well. Go against Trump in a primary and you end up in the grinder. That is what happened in Indiana. And Jennings made another observation that is critically important. He said, if you are Thomas Massie tonight, if you are sitting in Kentucky looking at the Indiana results and knowing that Trump has poured millions into the race against you, you have to be thinking this is a very bad night for you. Thomas Massie is the one congressional Republican who has been the single biggest thorn in Trump's side. He has voted against the president's agenda repeatedly. He has blocked legislation. He has grandstanded. He has positioned himself as some kind of principled independent when in reality he has been a one-man wrecking crew against the MAGA movement's legislative priorities. And Trump has decided that Massie has to go. After Indiana, Massie's chances of survival in his Kentucky primary just dropped dramatically. Because every voter in Kentucky's 4th congressional district just saw what happened to Republicans in Indiana who crossed Trump. They saw the margins. They saw the wipeout. They saw the 73-27 demolition in District 11. And they are going to ask themselves whether Thomas Massie deserves the same treatment. I think we all know the answer. Now let me explain why the Indiana results matter far beyond the state's borders. Because the implications for redistricting, for the Save America Act, and for the future of Congress are absolutely enormous. The Indiana primary was not just about punishing traitors. It was about sending a message to every red state legislature in America that redistricting is not optional. It is an order, and the order comes from the president and the voters who elected him. Right now, according to the latest forecasting, Republicans hold a solid 211 seats in the House, while Democrats are at 209. That includes Florida's new 4-seat map that DeSantis just signed into law. It does not include the 4 Democrat seats from Virginia because that redistricting is currently blocked by the courts. Republicans need 7 more seats to get to a solid 218. 218 is the magic number. That is the majority, and there are seats available. Louisiana has a court-mandated redistricting that will deliver 2 seats. Mississippi is preparing to redistrict and could deliver 1 to 2 seats. Alabama is in play for 1 seat. South Carolina looks like it is going to redistrict. Tennessee is going to deliver another seat, and Georgia could deliver a couple more. If Indiana had redistricted the way Trump wanted, those 2 seats would have put Republicans at 213 and brought them within striking distance of 218 from redistricting alone. Those 2 seats were lost because 21 Republicans voted with the Democrats, and 6 of those Republicans just lost their careers because of that vote. The message to every other red state legislature is unmistakable. If your state has Democrat congressional seats that exist only because of outdated maps that do not reflect how your state actually votes, you need to redraw those maps now, before the midterms. Because if you do not, if you protect Democrat seats in a red state the way Indiana's senators tried to do, the voters will come for you, and the voters will win. That message is reverberating right now in state houses across the South, the Midwest, and the Plains states. Legislators who might have been hesitant to push for redistricting are looking at the Indiana results and reconsidering. The political cost of inaction just went up dramatically. The political cost of siding with the establishment against the president and the voters just became career-ending. Now let me tell you about the Save America Act, because the Indiana results may have just broken the logjam that has been preventing this critical legislation from passing. The Save America Act requires documentary proof of United States citizenship and photo identification to vote in federal elections. It polls at 80-20 among American voters. 80% support, 20% oppose. That is not a close issue. That is one of the most overwhelmingly popular policy positions in modern American politics. And yet, the Save America Act has been stalled in the Senate. Why? Because Senate Majority Leader John Thune and a handful of Senate Republicans have been unwilling to push it through. They have been hiding behind the Senate parliamentarian. They have been making procedural excuses. They have been dragging their feet while the most popular piece of legislation in the country gathers dust. The Indiana results just changed the calculation for every single one of those senators, because every senator who is blocking the Save America Act just watched 6 of their colleagues in Indiana lose their careers in a single night for crossing the president. Every senator who has been making excuses just saw what happens when the voters decide that enough is enough. And every senator who is up for re-election in the next cycle just got a preview of what their own primary could look like if they continue to obstruct the agenda that the American people voted for. The Indiana results are a live-fire demonstration of what happens when you cross this president. Not a theoretical warning, not a vague threat, a live demonstration, with names, with margins, with careers destroyed. And the message is echoing through the halls of the United States Senate right now. Thune needs to replace the Obama-era parliamentarian. Thune needs to attach the Save America Act to a reconciliation bill. Thune needs to hold a vote, and Thune needs to do it now. Because if he does not, the voters who just cleaned house in Indiana will be looking for their next target. And Senate Majority Leader is a title that can be taken away just as easily as it was given. Now let me step back and tell you something about the historical significance of what happened last night, because I do not think most people appreciate how extraordinary this is. We have never, and I mean never, in modern American political history, seen a second-term president exercise this level of raw political power over his own party's primaries. Never. Not Eisenhower, not Reagan, not Clinton, not Bush, not Obama. None of them came close to what Trump just demonstrated in Indiana. The historical pattern for second-term presidents is well established. You fade. You become a lame duck. Congress starts to ignore you. Your party starts looking past you to the next cycle. Your endorsements carry diminishing returns. Your threats stop being taken seriously. That is the textbook. That is what every political science professor teaches. That is what those Indiana state senators were counting on when they voted with the Democrats. They were following the playbook that has been accurate for every second-term president going back to the 1950s. And in any other era, with any other president, they would have been right. The incumbents would have won their primaries easily. The anti-Trump vote would have been a footnote, and the consultant class would have been vindicated. But this is not any other era, and Donald Trump is not any other president. He is a second-term president who is more feared, more politically powerful, and more influential inside his own party than he was even in his first term. That defies every historical precedent. That breaks every model. That demolishes every assumption about how American politics works in a president's second term. And that is what makes the MAGA movement unlike anything this country has seen before. It is not built around a policy platform. It is not built around a party apparatus. It is built around a bond between a leader and his voters that is so strong, so direct, so personal, that no amount of establishment money, no amount of consultant strategy, and no amount of institutional pressure can break it. Those Indiana senators had local name recognition. They had local donor bases. They had establishment endorsements. They had everything that is supposed to matter in a state Senate primary, and they lost. They did not just lose, they were annihilated. Because the bond between Trump and his voters is stronger than any local advantage any incumbent can muster. That is power. Real power. The kind of power that reshapes a political party from the ground up. The kind of power that forces compliance not through persuasion, but through demonstrated consequence. The kind of power that turns a second-term president into the most dominant political force in his party's history, instead of the lame duck that the textbooks say he should be. Now let me bring all of this together and tell you what comes next. Because the Indiana results are not an ending. They are a beginning. Redistricting is about to accelerate across every red state in America. Legislators who were hesitant are no longer hesitant. The political cost of not redistricting just became higher than the political cost of redistricting. Expect new maps from Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia in the coming weeks and months. Every one of those maps will add Republican seats, and every one of those seats brings us closer to a structural majority that can withstand whatever the Democrats throw at us in November. Thomas Massie's days are numbered. The Kentucky primary is coming in a couple of weeks, and every voter in that district just watched what happened in Indiana. Massie has been the biggest thorn in Trump's side in the entire House Republican caucus. Millions of dollars have been poured into the race against him. And after Indiana, the enthusiasm behind his challenger just went through the roof. Massie is going into the grinder, and he is not coming out. The Save America Act is going to move. The pressure on Senate Republicans to act just multiplied tenfold. The voters have demonstrated that they are willing and able to end the career of any Republican who obstructs the president's agenda. That demonstration does not need to be repeated. It just needs to be remembered, and it will be remembered. And the broader message to every Republican politician in America is the simplest and most powerful message in politics. When the president gives an order that is backed by the voters, you execute that order. You do not second guess. You do not freelance. You do not listen to your consultant who tells you that Trump is finished. You fall in line. You do your job, and you deliver results. Or the voters will find someone who will. That is not authoritarianism. That is accountability. That is a political party that actually represents the people who vote for it instead of the donor class and the consultant class that have been running the show for decades. That is the MAGA movement functioning exactly as it was designed to function. A movement where the voters are in charge and the politicians are the employees. And employees who do not do their jobs get fired. 6 Indiana state senators just got fired by the people who hired them for failing to do the job they were elected to do. The Trumpian golden age is not fading. It is accelerating. The political power of this president is not diminishing. It is growing. The MAGA movement is not dying. It is the most potent political force in American history. And every politician in the country, Republican or Democrat, just learned that lesson in the most vivid and undeniable way possible. Don't stop here. The redistricting battles are accelerating. Thomas Massie's primary is weeks away, and the pressure campaign on the Senate to pass the Save America Act is just getting started. Click on the next video and join us as we continue to cover the unstoppable rise of the MAGA movement and the complete transformation of the Republican Party into a force that answers to one boss and one boss only, the American people.